So hi guys, I'm starting this video a bit late because I have a 21st night and I also had family members over, so I find it kind of rude if I start randomly filming when people are here. So this video might be a bit late, it might not be uploaded tonight but maybe tomorrow, so you'll get 2 in 1. But I'm gonna try and do this as quickly as I can. So today I'm going to be talking about top 10 dark fairy tale original stories. So every fairy tale ends with a happily ever after, right? Well, not to begin with, they didn't. You've probably heard that most fairy tales were much nastier in their original form than they are later in their Disney-fied versions, but it's still striking just how darker they were. If you don't feel like having your childhood illusion shattered, click away now, because I'm about to share some grisly details from the original versions of some of the much loved fairy tales. Okay, so coming in at number 10 is The Little Mermaid. We all know the Disney version of The Little Mermaid. It was one of my favourite movies growing up as a child, about how Ariel falls in love with a prince, she saves him from a shipwreck, and she goes through all this adversity to win the heart of the prince. Well, we know at the end of the Disney movie, the prince and Ariel lived happily ever after, but in the original version of the story, the prince marries someone else. Whoa. Back up. What? So yeah, the prince marries someone else and the Little Mermaid turns into sea foam. So in the original story, everything is exactly the same. Ariel saves the prince from drowning in the shipwreck and she falls in love with him. And she goes to the sea witch to get legs, and in exchange for her legs she gives the witch her voice. So this is exactly the same in the original story, except she turns up, she tries to win the prince over, but the prince falls in love and marries another princess who he thinks is the person who saves him. And when he announces his bride-to-be, it breaks the heart of the Little Mermaid. And so her sisters, they cut off all their hair and they give it to the sea witch in exchange for a knife. The sea witch tells the Little Mermaid that for her to gain her fins back, she has to go and murder the prince with the knife and bleed him out and get the blood on her feet, and she'll magically get her fins back and she can return home to her family. Well, instead, the Little Mermaid is too kind-hearted, she's too torn up, and she loves the prince, so she refuses to actually do the deed, and so in the end she ends up being sea foam, and no more Little Mermaid. It's so dark. So dark. Who thought this up? I still love the Disney version though. It's not gonna change my mind, I hope. Okay, so coming in at number 9 is Snow White. So according to Disney, upset by her stepdaughter's beauty, a wicked stepmother orders a huntsman to take her young daughter out into the woods and kill her, bringing back her heart. The huntsman can't do it and lets Snow White escape into the forest. She finds a tiny house where she sings with dwarfs, all named for their defining characteristics, and she decides to stay with them and to clean their house. The wicked stepmother finds out where she is, tricks her into eating a poisoned apple, and she dies, and well, a passing prince comes along and wakes her up with true love's kiss, and they live happily ever after. Not quite. In the first story, in the original story, the wicked stepmother isn't at all interested in Snow White until the magic mirror tells her that she is the fairest of them all. And of course she orders the huntsman to kill him, but when he doesn't, she goes and does it herself. And in the original one, she tries 3 times. The first attempt is tightening the girl's bodice too tightly. The second was a poisoned comb which she was brushing through her hair. So each of these 2 attempts that the stepmother made on Snow White, the dwarves had always come in and intervened. It was the 3rd time, however, when she ate the poisoned apple, that she didn't make it. Now, this is where the story takes a disturbing twist. So of course the prince comes along, except the prince falls in love with the dead girl's body and asks if he can take her coffin back with him. It wasn't true love's kiss that woke Snow White. It was the prince's people who accidentally dropped the coffin and it dislodged the piece of apple. But this isn't where the story ends. The stepmother actually was invited to Snow White's wedding, and when she was there, she was forced to wear these iron shoes that had been placed into the fire, and she had to dance until she died. So yeah, there is no such thing as true love's kiss. It just was an accident that she woke up. Okay, so we're up to number 8. We all know the story of Cinderella. So Cinderella, after her father dies, she lives with her stepmother and her 2 evil stepsisters. Well, in the original story, everything goes exactly the same, except when it comes time for Cinderella to try on the glass slipper. So, the first person to try on the glass slipper was the eldest stepdaughter. So her big toes couldn't fit into the shoe. So her mother went and got a knife and she told her daughter to cut off her big toes, and that when she was queen, she wouldn't have to walk anywhere. So the eldest stepdaughter cut off her toes and she and the prince went away. It wasn't until the prince realised that there was a whole heap of blood gushing out of the shoes that he realised he was tricked. So he goes back to the house. It's the second daughter's turn. So her feet, her toes can fit in, it's just her heels that can't. Once again, the mother actually goes and gets a knife and tells her daughter the exact same thing. To cut off her heels, and when she's queen, she won't have to walk anywhere. So the daughter does just that, and she cuts off her heels. And once again, the prince takes her away, but when he realizes that he's been tricked for a second time, he comes back and drops the daughter home. So now it's the 3rd time, and it's Cinderella's turn, and the glass slipper was made especially for Cinderella, and so of course, when she tries on her shoe, it fits perfectly, and the prince and her get married and live happily ever after. Okay, so coming in at number 7 is Sleeping Beauty. So this is an interesting one because the Brothers Grimm version of the story is actually pretty close and similar to the Disney version. There's a magic frog at the beginning, but there are 13 fairies instead of 3. So, however, the story before the Brothers Grimm actually got their hands on it, there were other versions, and they were pretty nasty. In Gimbatsi's version from 1634, once the prince finds Sleeping Beauty, he rapes her, and the 2 of them actually have twins. She only wakes up when one of the children she bore while sleeping sucks the splinter out of her finger by mistake. So yeah, no true love's kiss Sorry about that. And another version is Peratt's 1697 version, when he removes the rape, but he chucks in an epilogue about an evil stepmother who tries to eat the happy couple's children and ends up being thrown into a pit of vipers. This really says something when the Grimm's version is nicer than the others. Okay, so coming in at number 6 is Little Red Riding Hood. In the very oldest version of Little Red Riding Hood, there was no huntsman to save the day. He was only added in later to make a happy ending, but there are still more grisly details to the story, like how the wolf dissects the grandmother and wears her skin and makes Little Red eat part of her own grandmother. But another version is that he just eats her and the grandmother, and this is where the huntsman comes in to save them. Okay, so coming in at number 5 is Hansel and Gretel. So the story that we all know and love as children, it was pretty gruesome. I mean, 2 kids getting lost in the woods to find a witch's house only to push the witch into the stove and run away. Well, the original French version, The Lost Boys, is a lot darker. The parents decide to actually drop the children in the woods because they were greedy. They were really greedy. And so the children, they stumble across a little red house, and the woman in the house allows them to come in, but tells them they have to be quiet or else her husband would eat them. So it turns out that her husband was actually the devil. So the devil creates this sawhorse to bleed the children out on, and they pretend that they don't know how to use it. So the devil's wife sits on it, and as soon as she gets in there, the children slit her throat, they take the devil's money, and they run and they cross the river, which the devil can't do, and they go back home and look after their parents, despite the fact that they left them in the woods to die. Okay, so coming in at number 4 is The Three Little Pigs. So this is a really well-known classic story. We all know that the 3 pigs, they built their houses out of various materials, straw, stick and bricks. And we also know that it's the brick house that saves the 3 little pigs, and that the wolf decides to go down the chimney and he burns his butt on the boiling hot water below and runs away never to be seen again. But in the original story, the 3rd little pig thought that this was not enough. So when the wolf comes down the chimney, he has the boiling pot of hot water waiting for him. And once the wolf was in the pot, he shut the lid and he actually cooked the wolf. Once dead, the 3 little pigs actually ate the wolf. Okay, so coming in at number 3 is The Pied Piper. We all know the tale of the town that was completely overrun by rats, and how the Pied Piper saved the village by getting rid of all the rats and leading them out of the town. Well, in the story, the villagers promise to pay a certain amount of money to the Pied Piper in exchange for getting rid of the rats. So the Pied Piper keeps his end of the bargain, but the townspeople don't pay him. So the Pied Piper rids the town of all the children and lures them all into a cave. It isn't until the townspeople pay back the money that the children are returned. Well, in an original, darker version of this story, the Pied Piper leads the children not into a cave, but into a river where all the children drown except for one little lame boy that couldn't keep up. Okay, so number 2 is Rapunzel. According to the Grimms, the reason the Wicked Witch gets to make off with baby Rapunzel is that her dad actually stole herbs from the witch's garden to meet his wife's cravings, and when he got caught, he agreed to hand over his firstborn baby, which was Rapunzel. And Rapunzel gets stuck in a tower letting her hair down for the witch, But when a passing prince hears her singing, he decides to pay Rapunzel a visit himself. He visits her secretly several times, and the witch only finds out because Rapunzel gets pregnant and innocently asks why her belly's getting so big. In a rage, the witch cuts off the girl's hair, uses it to lure the prince back into the tower, then chucks him off the top, letting him fall into a thorn bush that plucks out his eyes. Eventually, though, there is a happy ending where the couple gets back together and Rapunzel's tears heal the prince's eyes. Well, there's another version to the story where Rapunzel wanders off into the desert and the blind prince wanders aimlessly in the desert, and somehow the two are reunited and Rapunzel has twins. They were really obsessed with twins. Okay, so finally on our countdown is number 1, Beauty and the Beast. So, Belle's father in the original version is actually a rich, wealthy merchant. He has 3 sons and 3 daughters. It's the 3 sons and youngest daughter, Belle, who are kind-hearted, whereas the 2 eldest daughters are selfish and cruel, and they treat the kind-hearted Belle like a servant. So eventually the merchant actually loses all his wealth due to a storm at sea, and he and his children are consequently forced to live in a small sort of farmhouse, and they have to work for a living. It's not until some time later that the merchant hears that only one of his trade ships has actually made it back to port. So he goes to see what's there, what he can recover, and before actually leaving, he asks his daughters what they want. The 2 eldest, being selfish and whatever, they ask for jewelry and the fine dresses, thinking that the wealth has actually returned to them. It's Belle who says that she's just satisfied with 1 rose. So the merchant leaves to find his cargo, and on his return back, he gets lost in a forest and he seeks shelter in a dazzling palace. And so he goes in, he spends the night, he has a nice meal, but it wasn't until he actually left that he saw a rose garden and recalls that Belle desired a rose, and he picks the loveliest one, only to be confronted by a hideous beast. And the beast is pretty angry that the merchant has taken something so precious and has been rude about accepting his hospitality, and that the merchant must die. So the merchant actually begs for his life to be set free, saying that he was only giving the rose as a gift for his youngest daughter. The beast agrees to let him live if Belle returns and lives with him and becomes his wife. So the merchant is upset by this condition, and the beast sends him on his way, and he gives him fine jewels and clothing to give to his daughter, and stresses that Belle must never know about the deal. But upon arriving home, Belle actually pries the secret out of him and willingly goes to the beast's castle. The beast receives her and graciously informs her that she is now the mistress of the castle, and he is her servant. He actually spoils her, giving her lavish clothing and food, and carries on long, lengthy conversations with her. Every night the beast asks Belle to marry him, but she refuses him each time. After each refusal, Belle dreams of a handsome prince who pleads with her to answer why she keeps refusing him, to which she replies that she cannot marry the beast because she only loves him as a friend. So Belle does not make the connection between the handsome prince and the beast, convinced that the beast is like holding the prince somewhere captive in the castle. So she searches and discovers multiple enchanted rooms, but never the prince from her dreams. So for several months, Belle lives a life of luxury at the beast's palace, having every whim catered by servants, with no end of riches to amuse her, an endless supply of exquisite finery to wear. But eventually she becomes really homesick and begs the beast to allow her to go home and see her family. He allows her to return home on one condition, that she return exactly a week later. So Belle agrees to this and sets off home with an enchanted mirror and ring. The mirror allows her to see what's going on back at the castle, and the ring allows her to return to the castle instantly when turned 3 times around her finger. So, when she returns home, her older sisters are surprised to see how well dressed and fed and all the finery that she's being received. So they are pretty envious when they hear of her life at the castle. And when they hear that she has to return in a week, they beg her to stay another day, even putting onion in their eyes to make it appear as though they were weeping. They hope that the Beast will be angry with Belle for breaking the promise and eat her alive. So Belle's heart is actually moved by her sister's false show of love, and she agrees to stay. So Belle actually begins to feel really guilty for breaking her promise to the Beast and uses the mirror to see him back at the castle. She's horrified to discover that the Beast is lying half dead from a broken heart near the rose bushes where her father had actually stolen from, and so she immediately uses the ring to return to the Beast. And as Belle weeps over the Beast, saying that she loves him, when her tear strikes him, the Beast is transformed into this handsome prince from Belle's dream. The prince informs him that long ago that a sorceress turned him into a hideous beast for refusing to let her in from the rain, and that only by finding true love despite his ugliness could break the curse. And so he and Belle, they get married and they live happily ever after. But the story does not end there. After Belle marries the prince, she wants her family to come and live with her in her castle. And the sisters are extremely jealous of Belle and actually end up drowning her in a bathtub. And here's another plot twist. The same sorceress that changed the prince into a beast changes Belle back to life and tells her that the only way to punish her sisters properly is to turn them into stone columns. And if a man can fall in love with them, then they can be changed back to normal. Okay, well, that's really much it. So, peace out. I hope you have not had your Disney dreams shattered. So see ya. Peace out.